Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lies. And this episode is a continuation of sorts to my episode about relationships. I promised in that at the end of that one that I would talk more specifically about the in-law relationship because it's something near and dear to my heart. It's something that I've faced struggles with, and I feel like I've overcome them and learned a lot from my mistakes. And so I thought it would help my audience because many of you are mothers-in-laws and you are probably dealing with a daughter or a son that has married somebody that you might be having some difficulties with for whatever reason. And so I'm going to share my experience with my oldest daughter, her husband, and he's amazing, I will say. But they've been married. They're going on, I think, 11 years of marriage. And we have learned so much through the course of the last, 12 years, because they dated a little bit, a little less than a year before they got married. So I'm going to share that story. I think the way I want to roll this episode is that I want to share that first. And then I'm going to give you 3 tips because I think 3 are always digestible and they'll get you to make some shifts. I hope by the end of this episode, I hope that you have some tools that will help you shift your thinking and start on a journey of a better relationship with that son or daughter-in-law that you have. And I also want to reflect on, so if you're married or you have been married, then you had a mother-in-law. And so you might have had this experience, but now you're in that role. So you might have been the receiver of a mother-in-law who maybe the tensions were there. I personally was very fortunate to have both my husbands have amazing mothers. Never have had any issues with them. They were very accepting of me and we always got along fantastically. And they're actually both in my life still. One has a little bit of dementia and that makes me really sad, but they're both amazing women. So I was not an amazing mother-in-law in the beginning, and you never know like what the circumstances are around a situation. And I also want to caveat this by there are situations where there are reasons to maybe not, maybe there's an abusive situation. So these 3 tips are meant for pretty normal situations where there's just a misunderstanding. There's just a lack of really knowing it's a lack of clarity. It's a lack of really acceptance, that kind of thing. It's not where there's really a bad situation going on. So that's the caveat I want to start with. But let's go back in time. So and I'm going to be very transparent and very vulnerable here because I am, in a way, feel like I was so wrong back in the early stages of my oldest daughter's relationship with her now husband. And part of that is because I think when I try to figure this out and like, why was I so resistant? I think there's a few things that were playing out and that I'll go into that. But I've learned a lot about how our mindset is based on our perception. And so looking back at who I was then, I thought everything that my beliefs were the absolute fact. This is the fact and this is the way it is and this is the problem, right? I didn't see that there were other people's perceptions and that their perceptions, they might be thinking the same thing back at me. And so how are we ever going to like align and get along if we're both coming from a completely different place, completely different belief systems, completely different experiences that are feeding into this whole dynamic? So I want to preface this with, I was insistent on that I was right. Number one problem, insistent that I was right, that I knew what was best for my daughter. And it wasn't that guy that she was with, right? And so let me talk about that. And so they met very whirlwind relationship. And within 9 months, and I knew that they were in love. I knew that it was going to lead to marriage. I wanted them to experience life as boyfriend and girlfriend for longer than they did. They ended up getting pregnant, and she was, like I said, had been dating about 9 months, and they had a long distance relationship, and they had just moved in together. And this was like the first month that they had moved in together. So they're still learning a lot about each other. So I started off with this perception that they didn't take enough time, that it was rushed, too much rushing into, let's get married. I will say they didn't get married initially because I didn't think it was a good idea. And so I let them know that. So think about that. That creates tension, right? They want to get married, but I'm like, no, you should wait, because I felt that they shouldn't get married because they were pregnant. I thought they should get married because they wanted to get married. And so let's still continue to have this relationship. So they lived together. And so they waited, which I commend them for. They could have gone secretly and gotten married by a judge, and maybe they did. I don't even know that. But she wanted a big wedding. And my take, and if I'm paying for a wedding, I don't want you to go get married and be married, and then you want your father to give you away. And that doesn't make sense. You're already married. What is giving away? That doesn't make any sense at all. And so that was my stance. And some mothers would say, hey, sorry, you lost the opportunity to have your big wedding, go get married. And that is just something that won't happen now. I know I listened to Dr. Laura for a long time. And, it was funny. I liked her because she was so firm in her beliefs, but yet sometimes I thought there is no gray area with Dr. Laura. She is like, it's black and it's white, and you do never let a child, you would never pay for a wedding, or she would never pay for a wedding of a child who had gotten pregnant. And she would make her daughter or son, she had a son, I know, get married. She would make her daughter, son get married. And I just thought, this is all my experience, my perception is, I thought my granddaughter, I don't think at the time I even knew it was a granddaughter, but I thought this child is coming into this world. And I think in this day and age, so many people don't get married and they have kids. So there's not that like, oh, you're illegitimate. We don't have that anymore. And I thought, would I want to know that my parents had to get married because of me? Or would I want to know they got married because they loved each other and it had nothing to do with me? And I thought felt like there would be more guilt associated with this fact that I was the reason they had to get married. And so this is all my perception. This is all my beliefs. And I didn't even check in with them because I was the mom and I was in charge. And if they wanted to have a nice wedding at some point, then it was going to be my way or the highway. So that was number one. So that's kind of my story. And then in terms of how my daughter and my son-in-law, we kind of started the whole dynamic. And I didn't even really know him until she got pregnant, if you think about it, because they had a long distance relationship. And so she was going to visit him. He would come up a couple of times, but like she lived somewhere in an apartment. And so I didn't see him. I didn't get to know him like she got to know him. So I didn't see him very much. I didn't get to know him very much. And then next thing you know, she's pregnant. And then this whole thing of, no, I'm not going to pay for your wedding. You have to wait. So you can imagine how we started off on the wrong foot. So then fast forward, and there was, I would say, tension. It was on the outskirts, but anything serious, really, just a little tension maybe going on when we would get together. But, we pretty much all got along. And so they, fast forward, had their second baby. And he was very young. He was in a stroller, and we went to go to lunch, I remember. And I feel like this had been like this building tension of kind of control. Like, I'm the mom, right? Even though they're now married, I'm still like kind of trying to control things. And that, because I was very much managing my daughter's lives for a long, long time. And it's hard to let go of that, right? So I look back and I think that, I realized that that was really was kind of interfering. So we go to lunch and I don't even know what happened, honestly, but I just know that my last nerve was frayed. And we were sitting down and I just felt like Ben was trying to control the situation. And I think my daughter was upset about something. I don't think he really wanted to be at the lunch and she wanted to be at the lunch. So there was something of that going on. And I was like, why can't he just let her, thinking in my mind, be with the family? What's going on? He's like trying to keep her from me. Again, this is my perception I made up in my head, right? Who knows what he was thinking? Maybe he just had something to do that he needed to get home to do. And so I burst out like, why are you controlling everything? Or I don't even know what I blurted out. Honestly, it was not pretty. And it was like, and my other daughter and her husband were there. And then my granddaughter, I think she was like 2.5 at the time. So old enough to kind of know her grandmother and her dad, like, were having this big fight. And I don't think a lot of words were said. It was just a few like brief sentences that were in anger. And my son-in-law, stormed out, and my daughter-in-law, my daughter and my son-in-law stormed out. Didn't stay for lunch. We hadn't yet even ordered. So it was quite, and if I'm looking back in my life at kind of the worst scenario, the like top 5 worst things that ever happened to me, I guess I'm kind of lucky because that just having a fight isn't like a horrible thing. I think it's a lesson, right? But it was devastating to me at the time. It was devastating because I basically like, it was like this relationship severing. I felt like it was that bad that it was like, how in the heck am I going to repair this? Words were spoken, feelings were hurt. They stormed out. My daughter was in the middle. She was crying. I'm like, what did I just do? What did I just do? And I guess that's a good thing, is that I immediately had regret about doing what I did. And I knew it was in the moment and it was just emotion. It had been building. And I'm sure it had been building with him too, because I'm sure I was doing things looking back that were like driving him nuts. But I just didn't see it because I thought I was being right. And so that taught me so much to honestly, what am I contributing to the situation? Before I even learned about neuroscience and how the mind works and how we have these blocks and we have our filters on and they make us only look at what we see as facts and we don't see the whole picture, right? Because we're not like putting ourselves in other person's shoes and trying to be loving and understanding. So they stormed off. I immediately felt horrible. Our lunch was ruined, and I felt horrible that my other son-in-law and my younger daughter had witnessed that and seen the mean mother-in-law come out, the mean version of me, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? And so we ended our lunch and I went home. And the first thing that I did when I went home is I wrote an apology email. And I said, I'm so sorry. I am like, I don't even remember what I said, but it was just taking full responsibility for what just happened and asking him for forgiveness, essentially. Because what I felt in that moment was, what's the most important to me is that my daughter is happy. And what just happened did not make her happy. What just happened made her really sad. And it exposed my granddaughter, because my grandson at the time was just an infant, so he didn't even realize what was going on. But it exposed my granddaughter to something that I didn't ever want her to see or experience, a big old family fight. We hadn't gotten food yet, so probably would have been a food fight if there was food on the table. And so that's the only thing in the moment that I could do at the time. And he didn't respond. And what I did is I messaged my daughter, or I called her. I don't remember what I did, but I reached out to her and I said, I sent him an email and I just want you to know, I apologized to her and I wanted him to read the email, and he wouldn't read the email for several days. And I think I gave up asking my daughter because, and in a way, I think I deserved that. And I'm kind of glad that he did that because, we want to wash away what we did really quickly if we made a mistake, and we don't want to take ownership. And I really, I deserved it. I kind of suffered emotionally for a few days because of what I had done. And people can say, and I could have said, it was as much his fault as mine, but no, I'm the adult here. And I think with my mother-in-law status, I was creating a lot of the problem. And so this episode is for me to share that I had such strife with this in-law relationship. And I just want to give a few tips of what I've learned from that and along the way, because I do have students that are sharing that they're having difficulties in this in-law kind of relationship with either a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law. And so I thought, how can I take what happened to me and what I learned and think of 3 things that I would say to you if you're in this situation. So number 1, you have to let your child go. You have to know that they are no longer yours. You are no longer the manager. You are no longer the leader. That job is over. You have left that job. You're retired from that job. You have to step back. Your child's an adult. Your child has made a choice and a partner, and you have to believe that they have made the choice based on what their needs are, and that you've taught them enough that they will be okay. You have taught them enough. They do not need your interference. They do not need your opinions about their spouse. Do not do that. That is only going to create strife. It's only going to create resistance from that spouse, and it's only going to create heartbreak for your child. Your opinion no longer matters. And honestly, your opinion is tainted with so much garbage that probably isn't true. You don't know why your child picked this person. You don't know the intimate details of their relationship. You think you know, but you don't know. And you don't know what that person is thinking and what you could be bringing to the table. You don't know what your nonverbal, I talked about this in the last episode. What nonverbal actions are you, what's your facial features looking like when you're in the room with this person? What's your body language like? How's your tone of voice? So many things that we don't even see. And you could be sending all these really negative signals. So you just have to let go and know that your job is done and you did a great job. And you have to give, that's the act of giving somebody away when they get married. You walk down the aisle with your child, and whether it's the mother or the father, I know sometimes they both give away it now, but that is done for a reason. Stop interfering, stop trying to run the show, stop trying to control everything, because that was what I kept trying to do. I kept trying to control. And it started with the whole thing about the wedding, I believe. And that kind of set the table for the relationship between my son-in-law and myself. And so, number 1, let him go. Let him or her go. Number 2, look inward. Look at yourself and know that your thoughts are based on your beliefs, your experiences, your interactions. Understand that whoever you're dealing with has the same set of stories, or not same, different, has a different, but their own set of beliefs, perceptions, experiences. And it's all fake news in your head. It's all fake news in their head, because it's all what we are believing based on our little small experiences with them. And if we had different experiences with them, we would have a totally different perception. And so, but so much of it is just twisted to be in the way that agrees with what we want to think. And so I would say, how are you, check in with how are you contributing to the negative relationship? How are you contributing? I mean, really seriously, step back and look at it in more of an objective way. Try to put yourself in the person's shoes who you are having this friction with. What could they be thinking about you? And this is not an easy thing to do, but normal people do not react like if you have friends, I'm sure you have friends and they love you. The person that you're having friction with does not see you like that. I guarantee you, they do not see you like that. So what is it that you are bringing to the table that is causing them to see you that way? What is causing their fake news in their own head about you? And that is where you have to do the work. Really start to pay attention to that and really make that your number one priority. If you want to have a good relationship with your child's spouse or partner, you have to do the work on yourself to get to the bottom of what's going on. And it will take time to heal. Things don't heal overnight. We want this. And, we're used to that. We're used to like on demand. I want to watch this movie when I want to watch it. I want this thing, this fast food when I want to eat it. I got a Keurig machine. I don't have to wait for a coffee pot to boil anymore. So it's going to take time. And it might take some conversation, but if you're dealing with anything like my son-in-law, he wouldn't talk to me. So he's not that kind. He's not that tight. It's hard. So I had to just show. I just had to show. I had to behave better. I had to I just had to earn I had to earn respect from him. I had to earn my place at the table with him. And it wasn't easy. It took time. But I will tell you, I did the work, and he works for me now as my right-hand man. And he's amazing. We get along famously. And I respect him so much. And he's such a good father to my grandchildren. And he's such a good, he loves my daughter so much. And I love him for that. Nobody would love my daughter, I think, as much as he does. And for that, I'm so grateful. Because that's hard to find in this world. And I let go, but I didn't lose her love. I gained a son in a way through the process, when if I continued to go the path I was going, I probably would have lost them both. Right. And that's not what you want. I remember writing in that email, it's more important to me that Nikki's happy. And if that means I'm not in her life, I'm okay with that. I knew in my heart she didn't want that, but I wanted him to know what I was willing to let go to make it okay. I wanted to know that I was okay with him being the man, being the husband. And in that moment, her father gave her away at the wedding. I didn't give her away. And I think in that moment, and that email was me giving her away. And I think that was the starting point to a new relationship with my son-in-law. So look inward is my second tip. Look inward at what you are doing to contribute to that, because I guarantee you that there is something that you are doing that is creating the friction or contributing to the friction. All right. You need to step up and be the adult, because you're not being the adult when you're causing this friction. It's a child's game, right? But it's hard. I mean, our emotions get the best of us, right? Number 3, do not complain or try to get others on board with your opinions. That's what we do, right? We get a gang together because it's going to make us feel better. It's going to make us feel right. And that's what's important, right? Right fighters want to be right. I learned about right fighters from Dr. Phil. I love that, right? You always want to be right. He's wrong. She's wrong. I'm right. I'm the mom. I know what's best for my child. No, what's best for your child is for you to back off and let go and look inward. That's what's best for your child. And what happens when you try to get a gang to agree with you? That's sending negativity into the universe. You're doing exactly what you don't want. You're asking the universe for more negativity, more friction in that relationship. The universe doesn't know negative to positive, and you're just talking about all this negative stuff. So what's it going to do? Bring you more negativity. That's the way it works. The law of attraction works that way. Whatever you speak, whatever you think, whatever you put out there, it's a boomerang. Comes right back to you. So you are affirming more strife. So that's what I have in my notes. You are affirming more strife, and you want to affirm, and you can really only affirm in this way what your thoughts and beliefs are around that situation. You can't affirm thoughts and beliefs that you want that other person to think, because they need to do that. But you don't even need to talk to them about affirmations. Just do the work on your own, because that could create some more friction, right? So, and what I would recommend in doing this last one, where don't complain, how about doing the opposite? Looking for the good that you see in this person, no matter how hard it is to find. It's there. It's there. And you can find it and you can write it down. And that's what I would recommend you do. I saw this, and it was a New Year's thing. Elizabeth Gilbert did this. She did what she called a happy jar. And I loved it, because what you do is you write down one little thing every day. And I had all these little like sticky notes, and I would write down one thing every day, fold it up, put it in a jar. And I did that every single day. And I forget what year I did it. It was like 2016, 2017, maybe. And so I went and bought this big jar at Michael's, and I filled it up day after day after day, 365 days. I put a little note about something that good that happened to me that day, something good, just a good, happy note I put in the jar. And the idea is at the end of the year, you go back and you open it up. That would have been a good thing to do last year with COVID. But I would urge you to create a happy jar for this person that you're having friction with. And maybe you call it a good thoughts jar. But what you want is to write down every single day something you love about that person. And what you can do is ultimately you can give that as a gift to them. Wouldn't that be great? Talk about that boosting in the relationship. Actually, the guy who wrote The Compound Effect, Darren Hardy, did this for his wife as a gift. He wrote down something he liked about her every day, and he said how much it improved his marriage, his relationship with his wife. And on her birthday, he gave her this jar of how special she was. And you don't have to give it to anybody, but when you do that, when you write something down positive every day, it seeps into your being. It creates these thoughts that go into the universe. When you only think about the good and you're not thinking about the negative, it shifts everything. And so that is what I would suggest you do. And then you say, I'm going to do this for 6 months. I commit to doing this for 6 months. Maybe just start for 30 days and see how you feel at the end of the 30 days, but commit to a period of time of doing it enough so that it really puts you in this headspace of attracting positivity. And you'll see that relationship change. I guarantee you'll see that relationship change, because you're changing and you're asking the universe for this positivity. And then at the end of 30 days, read them all. Refresh your memory. They're not there just to think about once and drop into the jar. They're there to review. They're there to continue to think about, continue to bring that positivity into your life. All right, so enough about that. I just wanted to share that. That was on my heart. I've been wanting to share this story, but it needed to be in a special episode. And I thought, how better than to talk about in-laws, because this has been coming up with my students with their kids-in-laws. So I thought, I want to share my story. And I think we go through things. And if we're brave enough to share our vulnerabilities, if we're brave enough to share our warts, and that was a big old wart in my life, that terrible lunch fight that we had. But I also, when something like that happens, you promise yourself that things are going to change. You promise yourself that that's never going to happen again. And so for me, that was, I guess, a blessing, even though it was very difficult and it took some time to repair. But now, like, he works for me, and he's an amazing person. We've both grown. And what I've learned is that, he's willing to grow too. And I appreciate that so much. We all have these stories, and they're not all beautiful, glittery stories. If they're stories that'll help people, then I'm all about sharing them. So I hope this has helped you, and I hope you can follow these 3 tips and create a better dynamic, a frictionless relationship, a positive relationship with any of, not just daughter, son-in-law, but anybody because this can apply to anybody. But I think in particular that we are emotionally attached to our children so much more than any other human beings. And I think that is why when they choose a spouse, that sometimes creates friction, because we have to let them go. Let them go, look inward, and never complain. Only think of the good. Get rid of the complaints, get rid of the negativity. Okay? Hope this has helped you. Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own Not Your Average life.